It's very rare that ordinary people like John and me get to rent an old estate for the summer, a colonial mansion, an inherited property. Honestly, I'd call it a haunted house and consider it the height of romance, but that would be asking too much of luck. Still, I'll say it plainly. There's something strange about the place. Why else would it be so cheap? And why would it have stood empty so long? John laughs at me, of course, but you expect that in a marriage. John is relentlessly practical. He has no patience for faith, a real horror of superstition, and he openly mocks any talk of things that can't be felt, seen, and written down in numbers. John is a doctor, and maybe I'd never say this to a living soul, but this is just paper and a huge relief to my mind. Maybe that's part of why I'm not getting better faster. You see, he doesn't believe I'm sick. And what can I do? If a respected doctor, who also happens to be your own husband, tells your friends and family that there's really nothing wrong with you except a temporary nervous depression, a slight tendency toward hysteria, what are you supposed to do? My brother is also a doctor, also well respected, and he says the same thing. So I take supplements, whatever they are, and tonics, and I travel and get fresh air and exercise, and I'm absolutely forbidden to work until I'm well again. Personally, I disagree with them. Personally, I think satisfying work with some excitement and change would do me good. But what can I do? I did write for a while despite them, but it does wear me out, having to be so secretive about it, or else face heavy opposition. Sometimes I imagine that in my condition, if I just had less opposition and more company and stimulation. But John says the worst thing I can do is think about my condition, and I admit it always makes me feel bad. So I'll drop it and talk about the house instead. The most beautiful place. It stands completely alone, set well back from the road, a good 3 miles from the village. It reminds me of the English estates you read about, with hedges and walls and gates that lock, and all these separate little houses for the gardeners and staff. There's a gorgeous garden. I've never seen one like it, huge and shaded, full of box-bordered paths lined with long grape-covered arbors with benches under them. There were greenhouses too, but they're all broken now. There'd been some legal trouble, I think, something about the heirs, and either way the place has been empty for years. That ruins my haunted house fantasy, unfortunately, but I don't care. There's something strange about this house. I can feel it. I even said so to John one moonlit evening, but he said what I felt was a draft and shut the window. Sometimes I get unreasonably angry with John. I'm sure I never used to be this sensitive. I think it's this nervous condition. But John says if I feel that way, I'll neglect proper self-control. So I make a point of controlling myself, around him at least, and it exhausts me. I don't like our room at all. I wanted the one downstairs that opened onto the porch, with roses climbing the window and those pretty old-fashioned floral curtains. But John wouldn't hear of it. He said there was only one window, no room for 2 beds, and no nearby room for him if he took a separate one. He's very careful and loving, and he barely lets me move without specific instructions. I have a scheduled prescription for every hour of the day. He takes all the responsibility off me, so I feel horribly ungrateful for not appreciating it more. He said we came here entirely for my sake, that I was to have complete rest and all the fresh air I could get. "Your exercise depends on your strength, sweetheart," he said, "and your appetite decides your food, but air you can absorb all the time." So we took the nursery at the top of the house. It's a big, airy room, nearly the whole floor, with windows facing every direction, full of air and sunshine. It must have been a nursery first, then a playroom and gym, because the windows are barred for small children, and there are rings and other things bolted into the walls. The paint and wallpaper look like a boys' school used the place. The wallpaper is stripped off in big patches all around the head of my bed, about as far as I can reach, and in one large spot, low down on the other side of the room. I've never seen worse wallpaper in my life. One of those sprawling, over-the-top patterns that commits every possible artistic sin. It's dull enough to lose your eye as you try to follow it, pronounced enough to constantly irritate and demand study. And when you follow the weak, uncertain curves a little way, they suddenly kill themselves. They plunge off at absurd angles and destroy themselves in impossible contradictions. The color is repellent, almost nauseating. A smoldering, dirty yellow, strangely faded by the slow-moving sunlight. In some spots it's a dull, sickly orange. In others, a sickly sulfur yellow. No wonder the children hated it. I'd hate it too if I had to live in this room for long. Here comes John, so I have to put this away. He hates catching me writing a single word. We've been here 2 weeks, and I haven't felt like writing until now. Not since that first day. I'm sitting by the window in this awful nursery, and there's nothing stopping me from writing as much as I like, except how weak I feel. John's away all day, and sometimes even at night when his cases are serious. I'm glad my case isn't serious, but these nervous troubles are terribly depressing. John doesn't know how much I really suffer. He knows there's no reason to suffer, and that's enough for him. Of course, it's only nerves, but it weighs on me so much, not being able to do my part in any way. I meant to be such a help to John, a real comfort and rest for him, and here I already am, a burden. Nobody would believe the effort it takes to do the little I can manage, getting dressed, keeping people company, organizing things. It's lucky Mary is so good with the baby. Such a sweet baby. And yet I can't be around him. It makes me too anxious. I guess John was never nervous a day in his life. He laughs at me about this wallpaper. At first he planned to repaper the room, but later he said I was letting it get the better of me, and that nothing is worse for a nervous patient than giving in to that kind of fixation. He said that once the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bed frame, and then the barred windows, and then the gate at the top of the stairs, and so on. "You know this place is doing you good," he said. "And honestly, sweetheart, I don't want to renovate a house we're only renting for 3 months." "Then let's just move downstairs," I said. "There are such pretty rooms there." Then he took me in his arms, called me a silly darling, and said he'd sleep in the basement if I wanted, and have it whitewashed for good measure. But he's right enough about the beds and windows and everything. It's as airy and comfortable a room as anyone could want, and of course I wouldn't be so silly as to make him uncomfortable over a whim. I'm actually getting quite fond of the big room, all except that horrible wallpaper. From one window I can see the garden, those mysterious shaded arbors, the wild old-fashioned flowers, the bushes and gnarled trees. From another, I get a lovely view of the bay and a little private dock belonging to the estate. There's a beautiful shaded lane running down to it from the house. I keep imagining I see people walking along all these paths and arbors, but John has warned me not to give in to imagination at all. He says that with my imaginative streak and habit of making up stories, a nervous weakness like mine is bound to run to all kinds of wild fantasies, and that I should use my willpower and common sense to keep it in check. So I try. Sometimes I think that if I were just well enough to write a little, it would relieve the pressure of all these ideas and give me some rest. But I find I get so tired when I try. It's so discouraging having no advice, no companionship about my work. When I'm really better, John says, we'll have Cousin Henry and Julia down for a long visit. But he says he'd sooner put fireworks in my pillowcase than let people that stimulating around me right now. I wish I could get better faster, but I mustn't think about that. This wallpaper looks at me as if it knows what a toxic influence it has. There's one recurring spot where the pattern droops like a broken neck, and two bulging eyes stare at you upside down. The sheer nerve of it makes me angry, and it never stops. Up and down and sideways they crawl, those ridiculous unblinking eyes everywhere. There's one place where two strips of paper didn't line up, and the eyes run all up and down that seam, one a little higher than the other. I've never seen so much expression in something lifeless before, and we all know how much expression things can have. As a kid, I used to lie awake and get more entertainment and terror out of blank walls and plain furniture than most children get out of a toy store. I remember the friendly wink the knobs of our big old dresser used to give me, and there was one chair that always felt like a solid friend. I used to feel that if any of the other furniture started looking too fierce, I could always jump into that chair and be safe. The furniture in this room, at least, is only mismatched. We had to bring it all up from downstairs. I suppose when they used this as a playroom, they had to clear out the nursery things, and no wonder. I've never seen such destruction as the children did up here. The wallpaper, like I said, is torn off in patches, and it clings tighter than family. They must have had as much determination as they had hatred. The floor is scratched and gouged and splintered. The plaster itself is dug out here and there, and this big heavy bed, the only thing we found in the room, looks like it's been through a war. But I don't mind any of it, only the paper. Here comes John's sister, such a sweet girl and so careful with me. I can't let her catch me writing. She's a perfect, enthusiastic housekeeper, and she wants no better career. I honestly think she believes it was the writing that made me sick. But I can write while she's out, and I can see her coming from a long way off through these windows. One window looks over the road, a lovely shaded winding road, and one looks out over the countryside. Beautiful country too, full of big elms and velvety meadows. This wallpaper has a kind of secondary pattern in a different shade, a particularly maddening one, because you can only see it in certain light, and even then not clearly. But where it isn't faded, and where the sun hits just right, I can make out a strange, taunting, shapeless figure that seems to lurk behind the silly, obvious front design. There's my sister-in-law on the stairs. Well, the 4th of July is over. Everyone's gone and I'm worn out. John thought a little company might do me good, so we had his mother and Nellie and the children down for a week. Of course I didn't do a thing. Jenny handles everything now, but it wore me out anyway. John says that if I don't improve faster, He'll send me to a specialist in the fall. But I don't want to go there at all. I had a friend who was under his care once, and she says he's just like John and my brother, only worse. Besides, it's such an ordeal to travel that far. I don't feel like it's worth lifting a finger for anything, and I'm getting dreadfully irritable and whiny. I cry over nothing, and I cry most of the time. Not when John's here, of course, or anyone else. Only when I'm alone. And I'm alone a lot right now. John's kept in town constantly by serious cases, and Jenny is good about leaving me alone when I want her to. So I walk a little in the garden, or down that lovely lane, sit on the porch under the roses, and lie down up here a lot. I'm actually getting fond of this room, despite the wallpaper. Maybe because of the wallpaper. It's so on my mind. I lie here on this huge, immovable bed. It's bolted to the floor, I think, and follow that pattern for hours. It's as good as a workout, I swear. I'll start, let's say, down in the corner over there where the paper hasn't been touched, and I decide for the 1,000th time that I will follow that pointless pattern to some kind of conclusion. I know a little about design principles, and I know this thing wasn't laid out on any law of radiation, or alternation, or repetition, or symmetry, or anything else I've ever heard of. It repeats across the strips, of course, but nowhere else. Looked at one way, each strip stands alone. The bloated curves and flourishes, a kind of debased Romanesque, with the shakes, waddling up and down in isolated columns of stupidity. But looked at another way, they connect diagonally, and the sprawling outlines run off in big slanting waves of visual horror, like a mass of wallowing seaweed all chasing each other. The whole thing runs horizontally too, or seems to, and I exhaust myself trying to work out the order of it in that direction. They've used a horizontal strip as a border near the ceiling, and that adds enormously to the confusion. At one end of the room, the paper is almost intact, and there, when the cross-light fades and the low sun shines straight onto it, I can almost imagine there's radiation after all. The endless grotesque shapes seem to gather around a common center and rush outward in headlong dives of equal madness. It tires me out to follow it. I think I'll take a nap. I don't know why I keep writing this. I don't want to. I don't feel able to. And I know John would think it's absurd. But I have to express what I feel and think somehow. It's such a relief. Except the effort is starting to outweigh the relief. Half the time now I'm so worn out that I lie down constantly. John says I mustn't lose my strength and has me take cod liver oil and all kinds of tonics, plus ale and wine and rare meat. Dear John, he loves me so much, and he hates seeing me sick. The other day I tried to have a real, honest, reasonable talk with him, to tell him how I wish he'd let me go visit Cousin Henry and Julia. But he said I wasn't well enough to go, and wouldn't be well enough to handle it once I got there. And I didn't make a very convincing case, because I was crying before I'd even finished. It's becoming such an effort just to think straight. This nervous weakness, I suppose. And dear John gathered me up in his arms, carried me upstairs, laid me on the bed, and sat beside me reading to me until my head was too tired to go on. He said I was his darling, his comfort, everything he had, and that I had to take care of myself for his sake and stay well. He says no one but me can pull me out of this, that I have to use my willpower and self-control and not let any silly fantasies carry me away. There's one comfort. The baby is healthy and happy, and doesn't have to sleep in this nursery with the horrible wallpaper. If we hadn't taken it, that sweet child would have. What a lucky escape. There's no way I'd let a child of mine, an impressionable little thing, live in a room like this for anything. I never thought of it before, but it's lucky John kept me up here after all. I can handle it so much better than a baby could. Of course, I never mention it to any of them anymore. I'm too smart for that. But I keep watch on it all the same. There are things in that paper that nobody knows but me, and nobody ever will. Behind the outer pattern, the dim shapes get clearer every day. It's always the same shape, just repeated over and over. It's like a woman stooping down and creeping around behind the pattern. I don't like it one bit. I wonder. I'm starting to think. I wish John would take me away from here. It's so hard to talk to John about my condition, because he's so wise, and because he loves me so much. But I tried last night. It was moonlit. The moon pours in from every direction, just like the sun. Sometimes I hate watching it. It creeps in so slowly, always coming through one window or another. John was asleep and I hated to wake him. So I lay still and watched the moonlight on that rippling wallpaper until I got the creeps. The faint figure behind it seemed to shake the pattern as if she were trying to get out. I got up quietly and went to feel whether the paper really did move. And when I came back, John was awake. "What is it, sweetheart?" he said. "Don't wander around like that. You'll catch cold." I thought it was a good moment to talk, so I told him I really wasn't improving here, and that I wished he'd take me away. "But darling," he said, "our lease is up in 3 weeks, and I don't see how we can leave before then. The repairs at home aren't finished, and I can't possibly leave town right now. Of course, if you were in any real danger, I could and would. But you really are better, dear, whether you can see it or not. I'm a doctor, sweetheart, and I know. You're gaining weight and color. Your appetite's better. I feel much more at ease about you." "I don't weigh any more," I said. "If anything, less. And my appetite might be better in the evening when you're here, but it's worse in the morning when you're gone." "Bless her heart," he said, hugging me tightly. "She can be as sick as she likes. But for now, let's make the most of the night and get some sleep, and talk about it in the morning." "And you won't leave?" I asked gloomily. "How could I, dear? It's only 3 more weeks, and then we'll take a nice little trip for a few days while Jenny gets the house ready. Really, sweetheart, you're getting better. Better in body, maybe." I started and stopped, because he sat up straight and gave me such a stern, disappointed look that I couldn't say another word. "My darling," he said, "I'm begging you, for my sake, for our child's sake, and for your own, never let that idea into your head for a single second. There's nothing more dangerous, more seductive, for a temperament like yours. It's a false, foolish fantasy. Can't you trust me as a doctor when I tell you that?" So of course I said nothing more on that subject, and we fell asleep before long. He thought I fell asleep first, but I didn't. I lay there for hours trying to figure out whether the front pattern and the back pattern really did move together, or separately. In a pattern like this, in daylight, there's a lack of order, a defiance of any law that constantly grates on a healthy mind. The color is hideous enough, and unreliable enough and infuriating enough. But the pattern is pure torture. You think you've mastered it, and then just as you get going, it does a backflip and leaves you nowhere. It slaps you in the face, knocks you down, tramples on you. It's like a nightmare. The outer pattern is an elaborate, showy design, like some kind of fungus. If you can picture a toadstool with joints, an endless string of toadstools, budding and sprouting in infinite loops, that's something like it. Some of the time, anyway. There's one strange thing about this paper that nobody but me seems to notice. It changes as the light changes. When the sun comes shooting through the east window, I always wait for that first long, straight ray. It changes so fast that I can never quite believe it. That's why I always watch it. By moonlight, the moon shines in all night when there's a moon. I wouldn't recognize it as the same paper. At night, in any kind of light, twilight, candlelight, lamplight, and worst of all, moonlight, it turns into bars. The outer pattern, I mean, and the woman behind it is as clear as anything. For a long time, I couldn't tell what it was showing behind, that dim secondary pattern. But now I'm certain it's a woman. In daylight, she's subdued, still. I think it's the pattern that keeps her so quiet. It's so baffling. It keeps me still for hours at a time. I lie down so much now. John says it's good for me, and to sleep as much as I can. In fact, he started the habit by making me lie down for an hour after every meal. It's a bad habit, I'm convinced, because the thing is, I don't sleep, and it teaches you to be deceptive, because I don't tell them I'm awake. Oh no. The truth is, I'm getting a little afraid of John. He seems very strange sometimes, and even Jenny has an odd look I can't explain. Occasionally it strikes me, just as a scientific theory. Maybe it's the paper. I've watched John when he didn't know I was looking, come into the room suddenly on the most innocent excuses, and I've caught him several times looking at the paper. And Jenny too. I caught her with her hand on it once. She didn't know I was in the room, and when I asked her, in a quiet, very quiet voice, as calmly as I possibly could, what she was doing with the paper, she spun around like she'd been caught stealing, and looked furious. She asked why I would frighten her like that. Then she said the paper stained everything it touched. She'd found yellow smudges on all my clothes and John's, and she wished we'd be more careful. Didn't that sound innocent? But I know she was studying that pattern, and I'm determined that nobody's going to figure it out but me. Life is a lot more exciting now than it used to be. You see, I have something to expect now, to look forward to watch. I really do eat better, and I'm calmer than I was. John is so glad to see me improving. He laughed a little the other day and said I seemed to be thriving in spite of the wallpaper. I brushed it off with a laugh. I had no intention of telling him it was because of the wallpaper. He'd make fun of me. He might even want to take me away. I don't want to leave now, not until I've figured it out. There's 1 week left, and I think that'll be enough. I'm feeling so much better. I don't sleep much at night because it's so interesting to watch things develop. But I sleep plenty during the day. In the daytime, it's tiresome and confusing. There are always new shoots on the fungus and new shades of yellow all over it. I can't keep track of them, though I've honestly tried. It's the strangest yellow, that wallpaper. It makes me think of every yellow thing I've ever seen. Not pretty ones like buttercups, but old, foul, spoiled yellow things. But there's something else about that paper. The smell. I noticed it the moment we walked into the room, but with all the air and sun, it wasn't bad. Now we've had a week of fog and rain, and whether the windows are open or shut, the smell is here. It creeps all through the house. I find it lingering in the dining room, lurking in the living room, hiding in the hall, lying in wait for me on the stairs. It gets into my hair. Even when I go out for a drive, if I turn my head suddenly and catch it off guard, there's that smell. Such a peculiar odor, too. I've spent hours trying to analyze it, to figure out what it smells like. It isn't bad, at first. Very faint. But it's the subtlest, most persistent smell I've ever come across. In this damp weather, it's awful. I wake up in the night and find it hanging over me. At first, it bothered me. I seriously considered burning the house down just to get rid of the smell. But now I'm used to it. The only thing I can compare it to is the color of the paper. A yellow smell. There's a very strange mark on the wall, low down, near the baseboard. A streak that runs all the way around the room. It goes behind every piece of furniture except the bed. A long, straight, even smudge, as if something had been rubbed against it over and over. I wonder how it got there, and who did it, and why. Round and round and round, round and round and round. It makes me dizzy. I've finally discovered something. From watching so much at night, when it changes so much, I finally worked it out. The front pattern does move, and no wonder. The woman behind it shakes it. Sometimes I think there are a lot of women behind it, and sometimes just one. And she crawls around fast, and her crawling shakes the whole thing. Then in the very bright spots she keeps still, and in the very shadowy spots she grabs the bars and shakes them hard, and she's constantly trying to climb through. But nobody could climb through that pattern. It strangles you. I think that's why it has so many heads. They get through, and then the pattern strangles them and turns them upside down and makes their eyes go white. If those heads were covered up or taken off, it wouldn't be half as bad. I think that woman gets out in the daytime, and I'll tell you why. Privately, I've seen her. I can see her out of every one of my windows. It's the same woman, I know it, because she's always creeping. And most women don't creep in broad daylight. I see her on that long shaded lane, creeping up and down. I see her in those dark grape arbors, creeping all around the garden. I see her on that long road under the trees, creeping along. And whenever a carriage comes, she hides under the blackberry vines. I don't blame her one bit. It must be very humiliating to be caught creeping in daylight. I always lock the door when I creep in the daytime. I can't do it at night, because I know John would suspect something immediately. And John is so strange now that I don't want to irritate him. I wish he'd take another room. Besides, I don't want anyone getting that woman out at night except me. I often wonder if I could see her out of all the windows at once. But no matter how fast I turn, I can only see out of one at a time. And though I always see her, she might be able to creep faster than I can turn. I've watched her sometimes far off in the open country, creeping as fast as a cloud shadow in a strong wind. If only that top pattern could be peeled away from the one underneath. I mean to try it, little by little. I've discovered another strange thing, but I won't tell it this time. It doesn't pay to trust people too much. There are only 2 more days to get this paper off, and I think John is starting to notice. I don't like the look in his eyes. And I heard him asking Jenny a lot of clinical questions about me. She gave a very good report. She said I slept a lot during the day. John knows I don't sleep well at night, even though I stay so quiet. He asked me all sorts of questions too, and pretended to be so loving and kind, as if I couldn't see right through him. Still, I don't blame him for acting that way, sleeping under this paper for 3 months. It only interests me, but I'm sure John and Jenny are secretly affected by it. Hooray! This is the last day, but it's enough. John's staying in town overnight, and won't be back until this evening. Jenny wanted to sleep in here with me. The sly thing. But I told her I'd definitely rest better alone for 1 night. That was clever, because really, I wasn't alone at all. As soon as the moon came up and that poor thing started crawling and shaking the pattern, I got up and ran to help her. I pulled and she shook. I shook and she pulled. And before morning we'd peeled off yards of that paper. A strip about as high as my head, halfway around the room. And then when the sun came up and that awful pattern started laughing at me, I swore I'd finish it today. We leave tomorrow, and they're moving all my furniture back downstairs to put things the way they were. Jenny stared at the wall in amazement, but I told her cheerfully that I'd done it out of pure spite at the hateful thing. She laughed and said she wouldn't mind stripping it herself, but I mustn't tire myself out. How she gave herself away right there. But I'm here, and nobody touches this paper but me. Not while I'm alive. She tried to get me out of the room, way too obvious. But I said it was so quiet and empty and clean now that I thought I'd lie down again and sleep as much as I could, and not to wake me even for dinner. I'd call when I woke up. So now she's gone, and the servants are gone, and the furniture is gone, and there's nothing left but that big bed frame bolted to the floor, with the canvas mattress we found on it. We're sleeping downstairs tonight, and taking the boat home tomorrow. I'm actually enjoying the room now that it's bare again. How those children tore this place apart. This bed frame is practically gnawed to pieces. But I have to get to work. I've locked the door and thrown the key down onto the front path. I don't want to go out, and I don't want anyone coming in until John gets here. I want to shock him. I've got a rope up here that even Jenny didn't find. If that woman does get out and tries to escape, I can tie her down. But I forgot. I can't reach very far without something to stand on. This bed will not move. I tried to lift and shove it until I hurt myself, and then I got so angry I bit off a little piece of one corner, but it hurt my teeth. Then I peeled off all the paper I could reach standing on the floor. It sticks horribly, and the pattern just loves it. All those strangled heads and bulging eyes and waddling fungus shapes just shriek with laughter. I'm getting angry enough to do something desperate. Jumping out the window would be excellent exercise, but the bars are too strong even to try. Besides, I wouldn't do it. Of course not. I know perfectly well that a move like that would be improper and might be misunderstood. I don't even like to look out the windows anymore. There are so many of those creeping women, and they creep so fast. I wonder if they all came out of that wallpaper, the way I did. But I'm securely tied now by my well-hidden rope. You won't get me out on that road. I suppose I'll have to get back behind the pattern when night comes, and that's hard. It's so nice to be out here in this big room, creeping around wherever I please. I don't want to go outside. I won't, even if Jenny asks me to. Because outside you have to creep on the ground, and everything is green instead of yellow. But in here I can creep smoothly along the floor, and my shoulder fits right into that long smudge around the wall, so I never lose my way. There's John at the door. No use, young man. You can't open it. Listen to him call and pound. Now he's shouting for an axe. It would be a shame to break down that beautiful door. John, dear, I said in the sweetest voice. The key is down by the front steps, under a plantain leaf. That quieted him for a moment. Then he said, very calmly, open the door, my darling. I can't, I said. The key is down by the front door, under a plantain leaf. And then I said it again, gently and slowly, several times. Said it so many times that he had to go and check, and of course he found it and came in. He stopped dead in the doorway. What is going on? He cried. For God's sake, what are you doing? I kept creeping just the same, but I looked back at him over my shoulder. I've gotten out at last, I said, in spite of you and Jane, and I've pulled off most of the paper so you can't put me back. Now why would that man have fainted? But he did, collapsed right across my path along the wall, so that I had to creep over him every single time.